From the stunning skyscrapers of Dubai in the UAE to the state-of-the-art infrastructure built for the 2022 FIFA World Cup in Qatar and the futuristic NEOM project in Saudi Arabia. What do all these incredible projects have in common? If you think nothing, you are mistaken. None of these groundbreaking projects would exist without this, often called liquid gold. The blood of global economy, or simply black gold, oil, is the lifeblood of many nations. Now imagine what would happen if the one thing your country depends on most suddenly disappears. For many nations, that's a very real fear. Shockingly, there are countries where oil accounts for more than 60% of their entire economy. 60% of GDP? Picture the chaos if the world stopped buying oil tomorrow. These countries would face massive financial crisis in the blink of an eye. But here is the twist. The world is shifting toward cleaner energy and oil demand is predicted to decline by 2030. So what does the future hold for these oil-dependent nations? Are they prepared for the transition or will they be left in the dust? Guys, hit a like button, subscribe, and let's uncover the top 10 countries that rely most on oil and what that means for their future. So how did we pick these countries? Well, we ranked them based on how much of their GDP comes from oil exports. The more a country depends on oil, the more at risk it is from price changes, energy shifts and global climate policies. It's like putting all your eggs in one basket. If that basket breaks, the whole economy could crash. With the world moving away from fossil fuels, well, kind of moving. Countries that are heavily reliant on oil might face huge revenue gaps. If they don't start changing things now, they could end up with economic chaos, social unrest, and possibly a loss of decades of progress. This is why understanding the future of oil is so important for these nations. And one more thing. We gather data from Bloomberg, OPEC, and the International Energy Agency, all of which monitor oil revenue impacts on national economies. Kicking off our list at number 10 is Ivory Coast. The country may not be the first country that comes to mind when you think of oil, but it still gets 17.7% of its GDP from oil exports. That's a big chunk of its economy. And with oil prices being so unpredictable, this dependency could put a lot of pressure on the country if global demand starts to fall. While Ivory Coast's economy is growing and diversifying, oil still plays a key role. If the country shifts too quickly away from fossil fuels, this small but significant oil reliance could lead to some serious challenges. At number 9, we have Belarus. It may not be known for its oil reserves, but 13.9% of its GDP comes from oil exports. Here is the catch. Belarus imports most of its oil from Russia, which is then refined into petrol, diesel and other petrochemicals at its large refinery plants. These refined products are then exported to Europe and beyond. So while Belarus doesn't produce much oil itself, it's deeply reliant on this oil trade. If global demand for fossil fuels declines or if there are disruptions in its oil supply, Belarus could face major economic challenges. Kazakhstan ranks 8th in the list, with 18.9% of its GDP coming from oil exports. The country is one of the top oil producers in Central Asia, and much of its economy is built on this resource. Kazakhstan relies heavily on its oil revenues to fuel its growth and government spending. However, as the world transitions to cleaner energy, this dependence puts Kazakhstan at risk. A drop in oil demand or prices could seriously affect the country's financial stability and its ability to invest in other sectors. It's clear that diversifying away from oil is crucial for Kazakhstan's long-term economic health. Algeria is another country heavily reliant on oil, with 25.3% of its GDP coming from oil exports. The country is one of Africa's largest oil and gas producers, and its economy is deeply tied to these industries. Oil and gas make up more than 90% of Algeria's total exports, making it highly vulnerable to shifts in global demand. Any decline in oil prices could have a massive impact, affecting government revenues, jobs, and overall economic stability. For Algeria, the future of its economy is closely tied to the fate of its oil exports. Number 6 in our list is Singapore. A global trade hub depends on oil for 31.5% of its GDP. While it doesn't have large oil reserves of its own, the country plays a key role as a major oil refining and trading center. It imports crude oil primarily from countries in the Middle East, Indonesia and Malaysia. This oil is refined and then exported around the world, particularly to other Asian markets. Despite its sophisticated economy, Singapore's heavy reliance on oil industry makes it vulnerable to fluctuations in global oil prices and changes in energy demand. If oil trade slows down, the impact on its economy could be significant. Landing at number 5 is Saudi Arabia, one of the world's largest oil exporters. Depends on oil for 32% of its GDP. This staggering figure highlights how deeply the kingdom is tied to oil revenues. However, Saudi Arabia is aware of the risks this dependence poses. Through its Vision 2030 plan, the country has been working to diversify its economy by investing in non-oil sectors like tourism, technology and renewable energy. While oil will remain crucial for the foreseeable future, the kingdom is taking steps to reduce its reliance on this single resource and build a more resilient economy. Guys, share your thoughts in the comments about how quickly and successfully Saudi Arabia is diversifying its economy. Do you think they will be able to make enough progress to stay rich and successful in the future? The Republic of Congo is fourth in this list. This African country is heavily reliant on oil, with 42.2% of its GDP coming from oil exports. Oil is the backbone of its economy, driving not just government revenues, but also employment and infrastructure projects. However, this heavy dependence also leaves Congo vulnerable. When oil prices fall, the country faces revenue shortfalls, which can lead to budget cuts, reduced public spending, and even slower economic growth. Moreover, the oil industry's dominance has meant that other sectors like agriculture or manufacturing haven't developed as robustly, making the economy less diverse and more susceptible to global energy shifts. Libya is another country where oil dominates, contributing a staggering 43.8% of its GDP. As one of Africa's largest oil producers, Libya's economy is almost entirely dependent on its oil exports. Oil reserves in Libya are the largest in Africa and among the 10 largest oil reserves globally, with 46.4 billion barrels of proven oil reserves as of 2023. The country has some of the world's largest oil reserves, and oil revenues fund much of its government spending and infrastructure. Political instability and conflict have also affected its ability to maintain consistent oil production. If the global oil market weakens, the economic consequences could be severe. At number 2, we have Kuwait, with 46.5% of its GDP coming from oil exports. It's another country where the economy is deeply tied to the black gold. Oil has been the backbone of Kuwait's wealth for decades, but the country has made significant efforts to diversify its economy. In recent years, Kuwait has invested heavily in infrastructure projects, tourism and finance to reduce its dependence on oil. New developments include modernizing ports, expanding transportation network and growing the banking sector. However, Kuwait's reliance on oil remains high, and it faces risks from global price fluctuations. The country's history also includes the devastating Iraq War in the early 1990s, which was largely triggered by Iraq's desire to control Kuwait's oil fields. While Kuwait has rebuilt its economy since then, the volatility of oil continues to be a central challenge. The nation's future economic stability will depend on how effectively it continues to diversify away from oil in the years ahead. Claiming the top spot at number 1 is Brunei, with an incredible 60.3% of its GDP coming from oil exports. As one of the wealthiest countries in Asia, with $35,000 of GDP per capita, Brunei's economy is heavily reliant on its vast oil and natural gas reserves, making it incredibly vulnerable to any shifts in global demand. Oil wealth has allowed Brunei to maintain a high standard of living for its citizens, with no income tax and generous government benefits. Despite these dependence, Brunei has been working to diversify its economy. The country is focusing on developing sectors like tourism, finance and technology to reduce its reliance on oil. It's investing in infrastructure such as expanding its hospitality and financial sectors and aiming to position itself as a regional business hub. However, oil and gas remain dominant. And while diversification is underway, it's a slow process. If global oil prices fall or demand decreases significantly, Brunei could face economic challenges unless it accelerates its diversification efforts. So, what can we learn from these countries heavily reliant on oil? First, oil is still a massive driver for many economies around the world, sometimes making up more than 60% of their GDP. That means these nations are incredibly vulnerable to price changes, political instability and global demand shifts. But here is a silver lining. Diversification is key. Countries like Kuwait and Brunei are already working to build stronger economies beyond oil, and others like Saudi Arabia are also investing in future industries. If they succeed, they will be more resilient for future shocks. For countries that haven't started diversifying yet, the clock is ticking. Without change, they risk facing economic challenges and social unrest in the years ahead. The takeaway is clear. Dependence on oil is a double-edged sword, and the sooner these nations adapt, the better prepared they will be for the future. Guys, don't forget to hit a like button, subscribe and share this video so you won't miss our future episodes. Also, share your thoughts in the comments. Do you believe these countries will be able to diversify their economies enough to remain rich and successful in the future? Or will the resource curse prevent them from doing so in time? See you very soon!